Hey guys, welcome back. We got a cool podcast for you. Actually, this is the beginning of a series. It's only 4, but I think you guys are going to like it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the different ways that the temperaments, right, can trigger other temperaments, right? Just based and unknowingly, right? With the best of intentions, right? We are always showing habitually with the best of intentions. We know what our intentions are, but oftentimes, we just might need a little bit of refinement and consideration of how other people are receiving. So today we're going to be focused on the choleric, right? And so how does the choleric trigger some of the other temperaments? What are some ways that with the choleric can in touch with what's really driving them, the intentions behind? And how can they really create some good communication between them and some of the other temperaments there that gets everybody on the same page and working together?
Yeah, stick around.
See you in there. Hey, welcome back to the Catholic Coaching Podcast. My name is Matt.
And I'm Erin.
Yeah, we're the Ingolds, and we are your Catholic coaches here today. And one of the things that we love to do as Catholic coaches is help people to name and claim their unique design by way of their temperaments. So we're going to be diving into that today, looking at how the choleric, you cholerics out there, we cholerics out there, I'll own it myself, how we trigger other people. What's behind it, and how just a few strategies on how we can avoid that a little bit. So we're going to be growing a lot in self-awareness because the goal here is we want to be in a deeper relationship with other people. We want to be better teammates. We want to get things done as cholerics. And if we're triggering people and we're creating all these conditions that get them off their game, we're not going to be as efficient as we want to be.
Yeah. You're definitely not going to achieve goals if you just keep kind of creating these roadblocks.
Yeah. And here's
relational roadblocks.
Right. And here's the funny thing about temperaments. They're so close, these habits, the habitual expressions that they kind of categorize in the 4 temperaments. We're so close to them that we often don't even know that we're doing them. And so oftentimes we are creating conditions that are kind of triggering people or causing them to be emotionally reactive, or a stimulus to them being emotionally reactive, and we don't even know it. And we're doing it with the best of intentions, and all of a sudden people start to react around us, and we're just like, what's the problem? Like, all I said was blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And then they're like, that's exactly the problem. So you're going to grow in some awareness of how people are receiving some of the choleric ways that you show up.
Yeah, and the other people that we are kind of gauging this against are the people from the other temperaments. Right? Like, how would a sanguine receive a choleric, or how would another choleric receive a choleric? You know, and so, if you guys are a family full of different temperaments, this will be helpful. If you are a team full of different temperaments, this will be helpful. So let's dive in.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite exercises. I love being able to do leadership workshops and just help people to recognize the gifts, the strengths, the weaknesses, the triggers of their different temperaments so that they can actually live together better and share a common mission together. But the structure to our podcast here today is going to be, first, we're going to talk about just the different ways that the temperaments will receive kind of that choleric nature, so to speak, and how they might be triggered by that. So growing in awareness there. Next, we're going to invite the cholerics to reflect on what they really want, because when you can understand the goal that you have and you can voice that out, you can invite other people to participate in it. And the third way is going to be kind of tailoring the way that you invite people to participate in that goal with you by way of their ideal conditions. So ideal conditions, one of the points of awareness in our unique design, they actually reduce the trigger conditions for people. Okay. So if we're looking to move away from triggers and into deeper relationships with people on our team, get things done as cholerics, we want to create some ideal conditions for our teammates.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. Okay. So let's look at, first off, we actually want to even start with, I love how when you're putting this together, Erin, how you didn't neglect how other cholerics are triggered by their choleric brothers and sisters here. So let's start there.
Well, I mean, I think this is really helpful if you are in a team full of other clerics, you know, if everybody kind of has their own goal in mind and you can kind of butt heads. So what that can turn into is a power struggle. That's one of the triggers. Like, right, both individuals want to take the lead, want to, you know, move forward and get as much done and be as efficient as possible. Mm-hmm. And both of them, if there's two clerics on your team or in your family or in your marriage, both of them feel like they are both right. That's the best way forward, actually. So there's that power struggle.
Yeah, I remember showing up on a church council one time, and there wasn't really an established authority structure. Yeah. But I, as a cleric, showed up in the room with another choleric that was in there. And I kind of wanted to take charge, because that's kind of a cleric tendency, to take charge in the absence of any sort of established authority. But I wasn't the only one that was in there. And so it was just one of those environments where I was just like, I don't know how to even be right now. And it was just kind of a tough situation.
Well, I remember the conversation, because I was there, and it was just kind of like a complaining session. Mm-hmm. And then Father, who was like so phlegmatic, was just like, okay, on to the next one. And Matt's just like, wait. What is this? Like, are we supposed to do something from these like complaints? Like, are we supposed to change something? And it was kind of interesting just to see how the dynamic of having a cleric there on a pastoral council meeting was helpful and actually focused the meeting.
Yes. So the power struggles, kind of the jockeying for dominance in there. So it kind of goes in one and the same, like these things here. So again, jockeying for dominance, even politicizing. Okay. So like behind the scenes, you start kind of getting political and kind of rallying your troops to come alongside and thought leading and stuff like that. So that's another thing. And just impatience across the board. Impatience
when you have a view, a perception that the other choleric isn't working as fast or as efficient as you are. And so you're kind of like, well, what's going on? And you know what? The other things that play in here are secondary. Secondary temperaments. So let's just say there's a choleric that has some melancholic, where that's maybe a little bit more highly analytical, and they want to kind of choose the right decision the first time. So they might take a little bit more time, as opposed to a choleric sanguine that both struggle with impatience and kind of want to be like, let's go, let's move. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to the sanguines. How can sanguines be triggered by the choleric, Erin?
Criticism. Yeah. Because of the choleric's blunt nature, and as a sanguine, wanting to have everything be positively and acknowledged, and be appreciative. A blunt comment can come across as negative and even critical. So yes, that's one of the ways.
And this is like a little like peering into the life of Erin and Matt Ingold right now, the choleric and the sanguine over here. Okay, so also lack of flexibility. I think this is something that sanguines often can just have a lot of ideas, and they can have a lot of energy, and they can shift directions very quickly. And so if a choleric is the one that's in charge, they want to get things done. And the more that you're shifting, that starts to erode the actual like achievement of whatever you're working towards.
Right.
Even if it's making it better. And so the inflexibility of the cleric can be something that sets off you, the sanguine.
Yeah, for sure. And it just, I mean, we have so many stories. I feel like we've grown a lot too, because even just like the criticism, I remember feeling criticized early in our marriage, but then I was just like, just stopped taking offense. I don't know. There was probably some mindset work in that. But the second one, lack of flexibility, that has definitely come to a climax, especially when we create workshops or lessons together. I want to be all over the place and flexible, let's move, let's make it better, let's maximize. And you're kind of like, let's just stay with what we have.
Let's just get it done.
Because this is actually the way to do it, right? And this is the best process so far that we found. So,
or at least a way, right? And so it's just and we have a deadline to hit. And then again, impatience is another one of those things that shows up here that can be triggering to the sanguine. Again, because clerics are driven to get things done, and sanguines aren't necessarily finishers; they're not motivated that way. And so that drive to get things done can often be triggering to that sanguine.
Yeah. The sanguines do want to stop and smell the roses and, socialize and get all the stuff just make things fun, which kind of can take some time, you know? Some
pausing and some relaxing along the way. And this is something that I've realized that I need to grow in as a choleric, is just the ability, like actually enjoying the process of achieving. Right. Yes. And so I can get so driven on achievement that whenever somebody's just like pause and wants to enjoy it, it's just kind of like, well, how is this helping us to get the end result? And it's just like, no, maybe there's a little space we could create for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of leaning into some ways that we can, at least that I've grown a little bit, and it's not triggering my wife so much.
You know what? Here's another way to look at this too. You could talk about relationships. You could talk about marriage relationships, but definitely like if you're a parent as well, and you do have that authority in the household, and maybe you are choleric, like how might this be affecting your children too? I think that's like really helpful. This is moving into melancholic, which our daughter is.
Yeah, here we go. All right. How do I trigger my daughter? Harshness. Oh, goodness gracious. This is something that I've really had to learn and tame by the grace of God. But just knowing that because the melancholic feels so deeply and so intensely, that rupturing of a relationship can be felt very, very painfully. So the harshness is something of the cleric. And I mean, even harshness is something that,
it's a harsh word.
Like I think it's a harsh word, but like the abruptness, like I don't necessarily feel like I'm being harsh.
Yeah.
But like it's poignant and to the point, and perhaps inconsiderate might be.
Sure.
Right. It's just like, I'm just going to get this out. Right.
Yes.
Efficiently as possible, which isn't necessarily taking into account the roundabout consideration of the emotions of the other person.
Like maybe an example is just like a transition for Avila. We can use that example. Like, you know, we know that she kind of needs a couple of like, hey, we're going to be
5 minute morning.
We're going to be doing this in 5 minutes. And, you know, she just needs that. But like maybe that abruptness or that, like you can just come in and be like, nope, it's done, you know? And then that's like also it just feels heavy, but even hard on her.
Even that, like where I just was like, my tendency is to be like, hey, all it takes is turning off the TV, which takes 2 seconds. So why are we making this take 5 minutes? So again, that's kind of like that efficiency drive.
Yeah,
that I have.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of that's there, and it's just like, but it's also very efficient. If she gets cranky and she's irritable for the next 35 minutes or so.
We are actually wasting more time if we rush through the process.
So that's been a learning thing. The high expectations of the choleric also can be something that is triggering to the melancholic, because the melancholic already has high expectations of themselves.
Yep.
And so they're already internally triggered often by their own high expectations.
Yep.
But to have somebody else's high expectations on top of that, and the potential to disappoint somebody else, where they're already prone to feeling disappointment of their own, not meeting their own high expectations, that can be something else that's additionally triggering.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also another one, impatience with details. I'm like secondary phlegmatic, but I'm very close secondary choleric. And I do feel like that level of impatience. And when there's like this thoroughness, like, and it's just like, oh, let me just make sure everything is right before I take one step. Like I can personally,
vouch for that.
Vouch for that one. Yes.
Yeah. No, we've seen it. I mean, it's just,
but being impatient with the details, I feel like slows the process down even more, which is interesting.
Yes. So, but that desire again to get it done, means that when somebody's interested, well, have you considered this? Have you considered this? What about this angle over here? At some point, it's just like, just do it. Yeah,
yes.
that's there because again, driven to get it done. Okay, and so like we're the melancholic, driven to do it right the first time, right?
Yes.
Driven towards that perfection, that high excellence. That again.
Yeah. So what's interesting is you both have high expectations, but like for different reasons. And
not to the level of detail though.
Right. Like I think the melancholic has high expectations to do it right the first time, to meet that ideal. And then for the choleric, it's like just to get it done.
Yes.
Like to complete it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And finally, the phlegmatics. We always save you guys at the end because we know that you are patient and wait.
Yes.
But certainly here, like that aggressive nature of the choleric can be something that triggers the phlegmatic, right? That's really driven towards that stability and wants things copacetic and peaceful
yep.
and very diplomatic, right? So the choleric can be very harsh and kind of abrupt with their words, whereas the phlegmatic is often calculated and again, diplomatic and considerate with the words that they use.
I imagine also because they are practical, like the phlegmatics are practical, I imagine that they are like, what good is this going to do? You know, like the whole like aggressive, you know, like let's get it done. Like what good are you actually? Like I imagine them thinking that like this is not useful or this is not helpful.
What good is it getting done if we're not all crossing the finish line together?
Right. Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
The demanding nature, when somebody is demanding or rushing a phlegmatic, they completely shut down. Like just they either overstress, overwhelmed, or they become really stubborn and dig in their heels and they're like, I'm just not doing it out of principle. So that is also a way that it can stress them out. But you know, a phlegmatic kind of takes a couple different, like maybe one phlegmatic would people please and be like, okay, and like operate out of the stress. Yes. Or another one might just like be super stubborn and passively or aggressively like turn off.
Yeah, just shut down here. And so like that, the way that a cleric also can be impatient with just kind of the more of a passive approach that the phlegmatic can kind of show up and take in the situation. That's like where it's kind of like, hurry up, let's go.
Yes.
Right. That sense of urgency that's there, that can be something where it's just like, well, let's actually not ruffle things or destabilize things just for the sake of speed. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Like but you can see here, even as we're talking through these things, when we can honor the gifts that the other temperaments bring, there's a great balancing that's taking place with all this as well. So, but again, that's where our growth is, which kind of gets into like,
what is it? What's really driving the choleric?
Behind the choleric? So what are some of the big drivers that we have, you fellow cholerics that are out there? I'd say like the number one thing that shows up, and hear it again and again, is just achievement. They want to get something done.
Okay.
So a good tangible result, close the book on something so I don't have to, I can shift my focus on to something else. I can check the box.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you get like a huge dopamine hit when you do that, right?
Yeah.
Like achievement. And I don't. It's a sanguine.
Yeah. Which is so fascinating here, folks.
I just don't.
Like, obviously, the Lord needs, like the church needs finishers that are out there as well. But the church also needs stabilizers. It needs deep thinkers. It needs galvanizers and popcorn excitement generating people as well. So, okay, so that cleric being driven by achievement. The reason why we're bringing these drivers up, by the way, is if you're going to show up here, we're going to move on to how you can create some of the ideal conditions that dampen the triggers of the other temperaments as a cleric, so you can communicate better in ways that they're actually open, receiving, you can be aligned, get things done, okay? Is you want to be able to share what's behind your abruptness or your sense of urgency or your drive, right?
What's moving you? What is behind this?
Because that starts to invite somebody to partner with you towards that common goal. Okay, so getting aligned means that both people are choosing of their own free will that same common good together.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right. So what's some of those goods you can invite people to? Achievement,
independence.
Tell me about independence, Erin.
Well, I mean, I just know watching you. Like, okay, I know watching you work, but also like, I think a good example would be like if I know a kid is choleric and they come over to my house and they're playing with Avila or whatever, I think just kind of giving them an assignment that they can own from start to finish. And that sense of ownership, but also like they don't have to necessarily play with Avila, right? And I'll talk to Avila and be like, hey, they're just taking care of that themselves, you know? So just that kind of independence. Now, independence can go wayward into isolation. Like, let me, I'm the only one who can do it, right? Whatever. But independence in and of itself is a a drive.
Yeah, that drive to find your own way.
Yes.
Or just find the way, right? Again, even saying that out loud, you can see how it can go very self-reliant and very vicious, right? But just desiring that independence and to find your own way, it can also be something that's like, I want to learn the way. I want to learn this for myself. I want to understand the steps so that I can be better and more efficient later on.
And, I think the other temperaments who are just more people driven, like the sanguine and the phlegmatic, so a choleric might be like not understand that. Like, why do you want to collaborate if you can get it done faster? Like, why would you want to? And, the sanguine, like I said, they have much different drives. They're like, no, like if I'm not doing it with people, then it's not worth doing.
Yeah, the getting it done is kind of the goal versus getting connected while working together and having and enjoying it and delighting in it is more of a goal.
Yes,
a different goal here. Okay, I said efficiency already. I'm going to say it again
because it's probably the number one.
This is a big driver for me personally, so I don't want to project on all the clerics out there, but I know that I love finding the most efficient way. And mind you, here, folks, in learning about the other temperaments and how to kind of resist some of my vicious expressions of my choleric tendencies, all right? That is actually, even though it's just like, it's almost kind of like
hard
to do, right?
Yeah, it's called virtue.
It's actually creating more efficiency.
Yes.
Because when you trigger other people, you get them emotionally reactive. They don't show up in their strengths anymore. They show up more in their weaknesses.
And they take longer.
And they take longer. They don't get it done. They don't show up as a team. It really can be something disintegrating for the team.
I also think what's interesting is a lot of these, drivers for you are showing up on the flip side of this, like in the triggering aspect. So with the things that we've already covered, efficiency definitely leads to impatience if it's not actually tempered.
So I'm creating my own trigger conditions.
Completely.
Yeah.
100%.
Which is ironically how it works here, folks. Like the devil would have it no other way. Okay. Leadership is another thing that I think just driving the cleric, the desire to be in charge, the desire to make decisions, be decisive, and to cast a vision and invite other people to participate and come along on that drive here as well.
And I think maybe the flip side of that might be like criticism or saying like, hey, like this is like the one right way or something like that. Like needing to be followed in that sense and being like, I've already figured this out. I've already led the way. I've already gone first. So come in and join me. But like if somebody else brings up an idea and it's like immediately like maybe there's criticism or maybe there's silent judgment, but there is like a resistance to that.
Yeah. And even if leadership is not necessarily a word that resonates, I know another one that works too is decisiveness. So again, that decisive nature of the cleric to just, because again, you want to get things done. So if we're sitting here in a decision, we're not going to be able to get things done. Hey folks, Matt Engel here, interrupting your podcast with a special announcement. We've got Called to Coach Week around the corner, August 12th through the 16th. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a Catholic coach? If so, that's what Call to Coach Week is all about. Maybe you are looking to enhance your current ministry, insert a little bit more coaching into that. Maybe you're already a coach and you just want to be able to up-level your skills or bring your faith into it a little bit more. Maybe you're somebody that's looking to explore a new mission territory in their life. Maybe start a side gig or a business, something like that. Could even grow into something full-time. Regardless, that's what Call to Coach Week is all about. We are here to help you discern if God is calling you at this season of your life to become a Catholic coach with us here at Metanoia Catholic. So all you got to do to sign up and discern with us is click the link in the show notes, register, and we will see you August 12th through the 16th at Called to Coach Week. We can't wait to help you discern. God bless. Justice. Okay, so justice, rendering to the other person what is their due, what's their what demands. So there's a fairness here, and I think what a cleric also, knowing that they're giving so much, they're pouring so much into something, there's an expectation that the other people on the team are also going to be doing this as well.
Yes.
And so it's inviting everybody to do their part.
Make sure it's fair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make sure it's fair. It's dependable.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's even another piece that's driving.
Okay.
Cool.
What do we do if we're kind of like, oh, that's totally me. I'm like too harsh, too critical, too impatient? Like how do we communicate to the other people?
Okay, so we're kind of getting into part 3 here. All right, so like we just talked about the ways that we can, as clerics, we can trigger other people. We just went into ways that growing and aware of what your desires are or what your drive is behind the way that you're showing up. Mm-hmm. So once you can name that drive, what's the goal that you're actually working towards, and become aware of that. Mm-hmm. Now again, you can invite other people to participate in that with you. And what I like to do is to communicate in ways that kind of creates their ideal conditions for them. So we have a whole ideal conditions podcast that you can listen to that kind of gets into the different ideal conditions that, for the different temperaments that are there. Not going to get into all that here, but we'll talk about it briefly. Yep. But even the way that you frame your questions or the words that you're going to be using, we want to be using words that are motivating to people, words that are seeing other people, even words that are acknowledging how they might be receiving you.
Yes.
And inviting them into a reframe that kind of creates some of their ideal conditions. So what do I mean by that? It's like, okay, so if I'm talking to another choleric, right?
And say you've discovered that you've triggered them in some way. Maybe there's the power struggle or the dominance.
That's going on, right? And so it's just like, I want to be able to acknowledge that they may be perceiving that I'm jockeying for power or jockeying for, the upper hand or something like that. And so diffusing that up front is kind of even acknowledging that. And it's just like, hey, I understand that, you desire to be heard, perhaps, or that there's, it may seem like I'm coming off as some sort of a power play. That's not my intent.
Well,
and forgive me if it's coming off that way, but
maybe it is. But if it's not your intent, we're not telling you to lie. So, if it is your intent,
own it. Yeah. Obviously, don't lie, right? But own it if it's the case. But if it's not the case, because again, this is kind of our natural way of showing up, and we're driven more by these drivers that we just talked about, not necessarily because we want to have the power, right? So, but it's just like, hey, I'm just trying to find the most efficient way. I know that's something that's valuable here to you as well. Mm-hmm. How can we kind of find the most logical way here together to move forward and just agree on a goal that both of us can kind of agree how we're going to move forward on something like this.
Yeah.
In the most efficient way possible. So again, like you desire efficiency, I desire efficiency. You desire to kind of
a clear goal.
A clear goal, I desire a clear goal. Yeah. You desire to have a say and a seat at the table, I desire to have a say and a seat at the table. And so
how do we approach this?
Yes, how do we approach this together and invite the person to be part of the solution?
I like that also you included the cleric in finding that solution together and not being like, let me figure it out and then tell you what the solution is. But even just bringing in that sense of collaboration, even though that's not necessarily,
it's the finding your way. It's the leadership. It's the that independence piece.
But I think there's an affirmation there and being like, I do trust you, which a cleric wants others to trust them and to rely on them. And so I think that's a piece there. Of course, all of these things that we're giving to you to say, like we kind of mentioned this before, make sure it's honest. If it's not honest and if you find that you are jockeying for power,
that's your work to do.
Well, I think apologize for that, own it, and then come into our academy. That's where we help you with stuff like that, right? Because these are ongoing things and this will continue to come back and back and back and back. And like no script that we give you will make that tendency or that habit go away. You need to address this kind of interiorly.
Yes. You don't need to, cholerics.
I'm sorry.
Trigger them, okay?
You get to choose.
We invite you. We invite you to use your judgment wisely and grow on your logical superpower. Okay.
Yes.
Sanguines. How might a cleric approach a sanguine, create some of their ideal conditions for them?
I like what you have written here. I think transparency can go so far with a sanguine, because sanguines don't hold grudges. Like they get over it pretty quickly. But I think even just an acknowledgement of being like, hey, sorry, that may have come across critical or whatever, or like, sorry about the intensity. Here's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Like
even being
really
able
just
to say,
transparency.
yeah. I didn't mean for it to come across that way. I apologize if it did. Yeah. Like, and it's not like I was being inconsiderate. It's not saying that. It's just like, I didn't mean for it to come off that way.
Yes.
Forgive me. I'll work on that. Okay. Now it's just like, how can I
collaborate with you?
How can we collaborate a little bit? How can I create a little bit more space for you to step into your genius?
Oh.
Where do you even, how do you see yourself fitting into this plan? And like, what's the piece that you're most excited about in moving forward here?
That's like music to a sanguine's ears. Like just a quick apology. And just being like, I'm sorry it came across that way. Like, this is really what's going on with me. Because the sanguine does want to connect with somebody and understand what is going on. Like, why are you acting this way?
Yep. Yeah.
And, transparency.
All right. For the melancholics, choleric approaching that melancholic. Remember, the melancholic they have those high ideals. They want to get things done. They're detail-oriented. And so even being able to say, like, how I might approach it is like, hey, like, I know it's important for you to do this right.
Yeah.
Right. I want to do it right. That's a melancholic wants.
Acknowledge that. Yeah.
I know it's important for you to get this thing done but get it done right. Okay. So help me understand really a clear vision that you have for what success looks like. But then also, like, I know we want to get this thing done here. We want to hit it. We want to hit our timeline here as well. And like achieve that ideal here. So what are you seeing? Help me to get on the same page with the vision that you have in your mind for what success, perfection, excellence looks like here.
Would it be helpful to say something like, part of getting it done right is to get it done within the timeline?
Yeah, I think that's an important piece, and I've never really encountered a well-formed melancholic that's just like, no, we need forever to talk about this, because I think like we're smart people, they're logical, and it's just like, okay, I understand that there's a deadline for something like this, and so but to create a space for the melancholic to even share the concerns, share all the potential pitfalls, all the ways that things could go wrong, all the details that we're missing or the questions that we haven't asked, and know that there's a time and a place where they're going to be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And that you as a cleric that's very good, extroverted, can create that space, that container, to use some of that language, create that space for people to show up and do that, but then also know that there's like a cutoff time where eventually we move on. I found that the melancholic feels seen and heard in that place, and knows that at some point, just like the sanguine, the good ideal box kind of has to close, and we got to move forward. We got to get it done. That, okay, like, we're done with planning. We're in execution at this point, and but as long as you create that space. Yeah.
I think it's also helpful to say, even like to the melancholic, like, what is your plan? Because they do have a plan, and you can even say, where are you in your plan? Because and this is kind of something that was coming to me as you were speaking. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was more about strengths, but it was a strength that a lot of melancholics have. It was like analytical or something like that. And there was this conversation between a boss who was kind of impatient and then the person who was working under them. And this person who was working under them was doing all this research up front and doing that all like that's kind of like, that was like the heavy lifting work. And where most people would be, 70% done, they were only 30% done. But after they did this research, it was just like smooth sailing after that point. So even just like, like trusting, like, hey, I know that you have a plan, and just being like, where are you in that? I'm curious where you're at.
Okay. So like, what are the questions that you need answers, answers, and then understanding that you need to move forward. Got it. Finally here, the phlegmatic. All right, so phlegmatics, they love the stability. They love to have relationship stability, harmony in relationships. Again, they're very diplomatic. And they're very logical here as well, and they're very practical, right? So even approaching this and saying like, okay, I know that I can often come off perhaps as just abrupt and disruptive. I don't mean to be disruptive to the relationships of the team here. What I'm trying to communicate is just, I want to efficiently get the language out there so that we can have a clear picture of what winning looks like or something like that. So we can get aligned, right? Again, there's that language. You want alignment. I want alignment too. I'm trying to get a clear goal in mind that I know is also an ideal condition for the phlegmatic, to have a clear vision, clear goal,
but also
that everybody
can
rally behind.
A process.
Yep.
Like I'm trying to create a process so that we can just kind of stabilize that process, do it over and over and over again, and create that consistency in the business or on our team. And that's really where I'm coming from. So just, using some of those words and that language. Once again, don't lie. If you're not making a process, don't say you are. but yes, like if you are, like you can use those words because that is appealing to the phlegmatic.
Yeah. So that's what we got here, folks. So we just kind of like, again, we walked through today. What are some of the ways that the cleric can trigger other people on their team? What are some of the drivers that the cleric could grow an awareness of so that once aware of those drivers, they might communicate really the goals that they're pursuing, and in a way that's considerate of the goals and the ideals and of the other people on their team based on their temperament here as well, right? When you can get everybody on the same sheet of music and pursuing that same common goal, they can agree together and they pursue that same common goal together. It's the foundation of a loving relationship. It's also the foundation of a highly effective team.
Yes.
And a loving family.
Yeah. And if you want to join us, we talk about this and we take it much deeper in our academy. We're really big on teaching people new language and even just the language of your loved ones. Like, what are these what are these words and these ideal conditions that you can create for your loved ones? And so come on into our academy. You could try it out for a month. But that's where we take this stuff much deeper. If you're like, yep, this is me. Yep. I got to work on this. Come and get coached.
Yep. CatholicCoaching.com. We'll see you there in the academy. Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.